Welcome back to another professional practice series. I am Shunda Jenkins, one of the Critical Mass Committee members and host of today's episode. This episode examines how modern spiritual and wellness spaces can sometimes recreate the same patterns of control, hierarchy, and suppression that people experienced in organized religion, often unintentionally. While many clients turn to spirituality seeking freedom and authenticity, they may encounter new forms of authority, rigid beliefs, or emotional bypassing that feels familiar and unsafe. The conversation invites practitioners to reflect on their role within these spaces and the responsibility they hold in shaping healthier, more transparent dynamics. Rather than positioning spirituality as the answer, the episode emphasizes discernment, agency, and embodied wisdom as foundations for ethical practice. Many people move towards spirituality seeking freedom, authenticity, and a more personal relationship with the sacred. Yet, without awareness, spiritual spaces can sometimes recreate the same patterns of control, hierarchy, or emotional suppression found in organized religion, just in different language or form. So, this conversation invites reflection rather than accusation. We're exploring how these patterns emerge, how they impact those seeking healing, and how practitioners can actively support environments rooted in agency, discernment, and self trust. The goal isn't perfection, it's integrity and accountability. So, joining me in this conversation is Tam Dillon. Tam Dillon is a mentor, a educator, and creator of the Yogic Tarot system, guiding practitioners to integrate ancient wisdom with modern ethical practice. She supports healers in building sustainable, well structured professional paths rooted in depth and integrity. As founder and chair of Critical Mass, she steward a global collective of healers and change makers working to restore dignity and respect to spirituality and its practices, strengthen community, and facilitate a global shift in consciousness. So, welcome to the show today, Tam. It's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thanks, Shonda. I'm always stoked to be on episodes with you. Yeah, it's always a good conversation, especially in today's one's a good one.
Exactly. And it's honestly such an honor for them to have you back speaking and sharing your knowledge and your expertise, which again, this topic is very important because I feel like the world is shifting. And so we want to prevent clients coming in and experiencing the same things that they have experienced through the religious and dogma practices.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a vital conversation, as you say.
Exactly. Um, as we get into this, what do you think draws people towards spiritual spaces after leaving organized religions?
Oh, I think one of the biggest things they're looking for is safety. I think is one of the first things. A place of belonging, a genuine community, and I think a soft space to land. Um, and the world has a very misguided view of what spirituality is. They've got that kind of like one-sided love and light view of spirituality. So people come from these heavy traumatic dogmatic backgrounds coming to a place that's portrayed on social media and in magazines and things as the soft place to come and land, and here you're going to be safe and held and supported, and spirituality is going to fix your problems. Spirituality is going to give you all the answers that you've been looking for. And that's why this conversation is so important, because yes, spirituality has that component, But there's also the other side to spirituality, because spirituality is dual. There is the light and the dark, because you can't have light without shadows. And people are trying to escape the heaviness of the shadows that they've been through already. And so coming to spirituality, they think that they're going to find just softness. Whereas spirituality is going to meet you where you are.
Exactly. I like how you said like people are looking for a soft place to land. But here's the thing, we still got to do the work, regardless of what what practice we are deciding to welcome into our life. It at the end of the day, we still have to face the dark side of parts of ourselves that we sometimes don't want to face. I mean, yes, it's love and light. Yes, it's a more relaxed space and less rigid, but at the end of the day, it's more about developing ourselves as a person in this
Mm,
experience.
absolutely, definitely. And that's when people are coming to spirituality because they're escaping the control and the rigidity and the dogma. I think you used the word rigidity really well there. Because spirituality is more relaxed, because spirituality is something we cultivate for the self. That's the stark difference between organized religion and spirituality. Is religion is organized. You have hierarchy. You know who does what, and when you burn your incense and when you have your prayers and things. But spirituality is so broad and all encompassing that anybody can come to spirituality and embody who they are. And I think for people coming away from trauma, they're looking to escape that aspect. And that's when they inadvertently land up in spaces that are so similar, because they haven't broken those patterns of that
Mm.
dogma that they're escaping. So it's like coming out of abusive relationship, you land up in another one. Why? Because you haven't broken the patterns. Um, so yeah, that big difference. It is a lot more accepting, because we cultivate it for ourselves. There's no definition of, if you're a spiritualist person, this is what your practice looks like. These are the books you read. This is what you do on a Sunday at 5 p.m. There isn't any of that in spirituality. It's what you create for yourself.
Mm. I like how you said that often, like the patterns. Like we have to get rid of the pattern, or we're gonna go into something else and it's gonna look the same, whether it's you left an abusive relationship and now you in another one, you're like, what's going on? Like, do I need to stop dating? No, you gotta get rid of the pattern so it can stop showing up in your life. And when it comes to patterns, what patterns do you see that tend to repeat? And even when the language and the aesthetics are different, what are some patterns that tend to repeat, especially someone coming from a religious background and moving into a spiritual, type of practice?
Mm. Hierarchy and control are definitely the two ones that leap to mind first. We have some prime examples of what that looks like when we had the New Age spirituality movement coming through in the 60s. We had a lot of people coming over from the East, bringing philosophies like yoga and Buddhism, and the West is so disconnected from its spiritual self, and people are craving this. People are craving that aspect, that reconnection with self and source in a healthy way. So when you had all these gurus coming across and sharing this ancient wisdom, they didn't know that these gurus, using that word very loosely again, were not true to the words that they were teaching and speaking others. If you look at a practice like yoga or Buddhism, I mean, they're rooted in care, compassion. I mean, yoga's ethics, yamas and niyamas: be non-harming, don't lie, don't steal. And if you look at some of these yogis, I mean, Bikram Chaudhry of Bikram Yoga is a very prominent example of that. If you watch the documentary around him and you see him in his classes, he's absolutely an authoritarian figure. He's not a guru, he's not a yogi at all. He's not the embodiment of what yoga is, because he is very harming. He doesn't speak truth. And so we have these false examples of spiritual leaders and spiritual teachers and guides coming in, and pretty much just repeating exactly what people are trying to get away from in the church, that control, that coercion, that hierarchical power that says you need to stay small, you need to be less than me, I'm better than you, I'm bigger than you. And spirituality doesn't have place for that. Spirituality is we're all on an equal footing. Spirituality is going to meet you exactly where you are, like I said just now. And if you're elevating yourself above everyone else inside spiritual spaces, you may as well be running a church and a cult. Like there's no difference. There really isn't. There is no room for power over another inside spirituality, because spirituality is about empowering the self, and you can't empower the self or empower others if you're dominating them and you're being that authoritarian figure.
Yeah. I mean, it starts, I mean, they basically become, the pastor of you, or you are looking, you end up following someone and implementing their principles, and it becomes as if you don't do this a certain way to them, right? And they're the master of you, right? Instead of you
Mm.
looking at them as like, we're equal beings. Like, if they're saying they're above me, all right, I need to get on out of here because anybody who's saying that, and honestly, I've tried, like that's what I do with my clients as well. Like I try to instill in them like, listen, I'm not no better than you. I make mistakes. Don't look at me as someone better. Or that you want to get to my level. Like, what is my level? We're
Yeah,
all on this
exactly.
journey together, and if you got someone that has that same type of feeling as you need to be like this, and I am above you, and everyone, and I get what you're saying, where it becomes like they start to worship them, and
Mm.
that is not, you're still doing a religion, you're still in that same type of community, right? It just looks different. It's just a different way, but it's the same. And that is still the pattern.
Absolutely. You're still using ancient teachings. I mean, the Bible is ancient teachings, and the Bible
Yeah.
has some incredible teachings, but
Yeah.
you're using ancient teachings for a form of control over others. And that's where as practitioners we've got to be so mindful, because and I speak about this, in fact, throughout the month of March, I spoke about this quite a lot. As practitioners, we do hold a position of authority and power with our clients, because they're coming to us in very vulnerable states. They're unpacking all their stuff. Um, I mean, I've had people express some of the deepest, darkest experiences that they've had just as a tarot reader, never mind as a mentor or a coach. So people are coming to us to look for guidance, to give us the answers, to heal them, to fix them, to make their lives better, to give them balance. And they inadvertently hand a sense of power over to us, and they do pop us up on a pedestal and say, you know more than me. You need to tell me what to do. And that's where, as a practitioner, you've got to be so mindful that you are sitting in a position of power, and how you navigate that seat is everything. And that's going to dictate the relationship that you're going to form with your client. Are you going to allow them to keep you up on that pedestal? I think you put it beautifully where you said, like, I'm not better than you. I don't, I mean, yeah, I've trained and I've got the skills to do the thing that I need to do, but I'm not better than you. I'm not further along than you. I've got clients that are further along than me in certain aspects of life, and I'm further along than them in certain aspects. And that's why we need to, I mean, I say this often, check yourself before you wreck yourself or someone else. You've got to know that you've got that power position, and you've got to be so mindful of how you use it. So it really is, when you're working with clients, you got to be so balanced. Like, don't shrink down oh no, I'm not in charge, I'm not an authority figure. Like, you're still holding a sense of power for your clients, and acknowledge that aspect and find that middle ground. And try not to let it go to your head when clients are like, oh, you're so amazing, and you've given me the answers, and you fixed me, and you made my life better. Like, sure, that feels great and it's gratifying, and it reinforces that you're doing the right type of work. But balance, you got to have that middle line. You don't lean to like one side or the other. Don't dismiss the fact that you do hold a position of power in a sense as a practitioner.
Hmm.
Mm.
No, I like how you said that, like having that middle ground. Because of course they're coming to you because you know what you do. You have the skills. You went either you trained in it or it's something you developed over years within yourself. So you do hold a certain authority, but don't take it as if you are superior to this person. Like being able to balance that out. So how does spiritual bypassing show up, especially around like pain, anger, doubt, or grief? How do you think that shows up when it comes to working with our clients?
Oof. I think the most prominent one, and it's a conversation you've got to have with so much nuance and so much delicacy, is everything happens for a reason. You decided this before you came into this lifetime. And there's so many levels to that type of conversation with our clients because yes, there's 8 billion of us existing on the planet at the same time, and we do have the collective. We're all interconnected and we're all influencing one another. Every action has a reaction. But you've got to read the room. If your client is coming in and they're unpacking years of horrific abuse coming outside of organized religion and they're putting this all out in front of you in a session, and you say to them, well, you chose that.
Mm,
Like, ooh, time and place. Nuance, time and place, people, time and place. And it's you've got to slowly we weave in the bigger picture of like, yes, we do have certain things where we do decide certain things, but if this person was born and raised inside the system, they didn't have choice. And the whole thing of you signing the soul contract and dictating your life before you come into this lifetimes, we don't know for sure if that is the truth. So again, time and place with your client. You don't just, well, you signed your soul contract, you agreed to this before you came into this lifetime. You've really got to read the room with your clients, and introduce them as um, philosophies or concepts. So you could have the conversation of, I've in certain spiritual spaces, there's the belief that certain things happen for certain reasons. Would you like to explore perhaps what lessons you could take out of the experience that you've had? What can you take from this that would make you better and stronger? Not you pick this. No, honey, I was born into this. So it really is. It's such a nuanced conversation we've got to have with our clients. We've really got to be so delicate with it, because that bypassing of everything happens for a reason. You chose this. You obviously had a big lesson to learn in this. You can do so much harm to your clients. It's to them. It's like shaming your clients. You're shaming
yeah.
them. Like, hey, you were in charge. You picked this. Like, it's an awful thing to say to someone. They're unpacking their trauma in front of you. Like you've got to be so nuanced in that conversation. Mm.
Wow. No, I mean, I think that, and then it comes back to like bringing them back in that same type of environment, and religion. And they're like, oh, just pray about it. Prayer fixes everything. But like, how, like right now, I don't need you to tell me that me praying is going to fix the grief that I have, that the pain that I'm experiencing right now. And it's like, it starts to look like someone is not taking your feelings into consideration. So I think that was a really good point to make, Tam. It's like reading the room, knowing who you're talking to, and understanding how to tailor what you're about to say to them. Because again, you could put this person into a state of like feeling like they just got their feelings like rejected. And they're opening up, and this is a very vulnerable space for them to be in.
Mm. Mm.
And
Yeah.
so, what you say to them after what they just unpacked with you is going to determine if their walls are going to go up.
Absolutely. And I mean, you gave such a great example because when people, I mean, I've heard the stories multiple times where someone's in a really bad situation, or hey, they're having the living shit beaten out of them by their husband, for example, and they go to the pastor, and the pastor's like, well, pray it away, pray for yourself, pray, what can you do to make the situation better? And it's in spiritual spaces, you get the same thing, mindset, don't think about it, just shift your mindset, be positive about it. Don't you the whole thing of what you put out, you attract, that whole energetic side of bypassing. It's incredibly harmful, and it's very damaging to a person, where it's like you've been through this horrific experience, and the person in front of you that you're coming to as, as an authority figure and a guide, and they say, just change your mind. Just change your
Mm.
mindset. Toxic positivity is no different to just pray it away. Like, you can't pray away a bad experience. You can't mind shift your way through a bad experience. You've got to, if you're going to be a guide for someone, you walk alongside them as they move through the experience, not shift your mindset, pray it away. That's a very dismissive way of dealing with your clients, like you put out there. It's very damaging.
Hmm. And I feel like it kind of teaches you not to really work through your feelings. Because I know, like, often, at least as a kid, sometimes we're conditioned to, like, don't cry or, stop whining or whatever. And so it comes back to, you know, your feelings being dismissed, and you're not also dealing with your feelings and working through what you're actually going through, because people are trying to have you like cover it up. Really, I feel like it's covering up what I'm actually experiencing, and I'm not allowed to actually experience this grief or this pain, or of what I'm experiencing in the moment.
It's like, just put some foundation on to cover the bruises. The
Exactly. You'll
bruises
be
are still there, man. Like, the bruise is not gone.
exactly.
I need someone to put an ice pack on the bruise, please, and be like, hey, what else do you need? Can I make you a cup of tea? Not, here's
Exactly.
some foundation and cover it up. That was a great way that you put that, just making you feel like, oh, I just got to cover up and pretend like it didn't happen. Um, no, no to that nonsense.
Exactly. Like exit stage left because I'm not coming back to this
Yeah,
session.
yeah, yeah. Hard exit to stage left, please. Jeez.
And what are some ways that practitioners can unintentionally create this dependency instead of empowerment? So how are we creating this, or any practitioner can unintentionally create this dependency with their
Mm.
clients?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So your client is in such a vulnerable place right now. And they're looking for answers. They're looking for something that's going to ease the experience that they've been through. And because they're in such a vulnerable space, a codependency cycle can form so quickly if you, as a practitioner, are not checked in your codependency. And I mean, it's a common trait for us because we're deeply empathetic. We have that thing that's ingrained in our DNA that says we're here to make the world better and we're here to help people. And if we're not checking ourselves and doing the work beforehand to be like, how am I with my codependency? How am I with myself? How good is my self-awareness? You'll inadvertently reform that cycle of codependence with your client because they're in that position of weakness. So your client comes in and they need you and you want to be needed, and you're just going to be like, cool, I'm going to do things that are going to keep you needing me. Um, so we will structure our sessions in a way where, if we're doing energy work or meditation with them, I recommend you come back for at least 12 sessions. You got to have at least 12 sessions. Like, man, that's a lot of energy work. Like nobody needs that much meditation or energy work. Like, you can give them a script, and they, like a doctor, and you give them a script and they go home and do the meditation. You can't have your clients being reliant on you, because now we're grasping to our clients, and if you're grasping onto your clients, you don't have room to take on any other clients. And then you get stuck with clients that are just stuck with you, and you're just stuck in a really unhealthy cycle. So yeah, codependence would definitely show up in these kinds of dynamics because that client comes in so vulnerable. You've really got to have such deep self-awareness as a practitioner. You gotta know, like, have I got codependent tendencies? Do I feel like I'm trying to fix this person? Am I trying to, gauge what I think their outcome should be? And that makes a dangerous practitioner. And unfortunately, that practitioner thinks they're coming from good intentions. They don't see the danger of the damage.
Mm. No, I think it's also like when we talk about empowerment, I also think like if we have that codependency with them, this person is actually not able to go out in the world and deal with their problems, right? They're gonna be like, "Oh, Tam, what do I do? I'm at the red light. It's turning green. What do I need to do?"
Yeah.
You're like, "Go. You just need to go." And so it's like they become so dependent on you that they can't even make their own decisions before talking to you. And it's really affects their intuition because their intuition could be telling them like, hey, you need to make this decision, but they're coming to us and we're telling them to make this decision because we have developed this relationship with each other, and we could be inadvertently causing them to be further behind on their path
Yeah, yeah.
because we have created this relationship with each other.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've seen it. I've had clients like that. When I read tarot, I saw that a lot because clients were coming to me in vulnerable places. I mean, people wouldn't make business decisions without phoning me and being like, "Can you pull me some cards?" I'm going through a messy divorce. Can you pull me some cards throughout the entire process? I'm just like, "Phew, I'm exhausted. Like, something here in this dynamic is not correct." And at the time I was working on my codependence, and I'm like, this doesn't look like a healthy dynamic. And I needed to put down boundaries with those clients and re-empower them and say like, hey, you need to take ownership of your life. You can't have me telling you, if you're at the red light and it goes green, what are you supposed to do? And use your own inner gut, use your intuition and your common sense, use what's going on the inside to be like, hey, the light's green, I should probably go right now. Like, what to do at a red light when it turns green, right? Like, we all know what to do. um but because the client has handed over or tried to hand over so much power to the practitioner, and depending on how that practitioner engages with that client, they're going to be like, I mean, if it's green, I mean, you could sit there a little bit and see if it goes orange. I'm not there, so I'm just guessing, and then the person gets into an accident, and now you have a big problem on your hands. So yeah, that's boundaries, healthy boundaries with your clients is so, so important. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm. No, I think for me, it was something that I also had to learn too, like in the beginning stages of being a practitioner. And it's like you want these clients. So it's like you start to get into somewhat of a what is the word I'm thinking of? Like you might think that poverty, maybe you get into a poverty mindset and you're like, if I let these clients go, I might not have any clients. So let me just hold on to these. And
Yeah.
so that was something I actually had to work through. And I started to see more success with the people I was working with when I didn't have that codependency relationship.
Yeah, the scarcity and poverty mindset for practitioners. And I mean, it's common for a lot of us, like the starving artists out there. And we can't operate from that place. I mean, yoga's ethics offers you a great one, non-attachment. You can't have attachment to your clients. You can hope for the best for them and whatever the best is for them, but you can't have attachments to them because if you're clutching to onto your clients because like, oh God, what if I don't get any more? You're doing the ones that you're clinging to a huge disservice, and you're not creating space for new clients to come in. The universe is like, okay, well, you got your hands full, so we can't send you any more work. You're like, come on, like, you got to make space for the clients, and then we're like, why have I got no more clients coming in? Because your hands are full with very draining, what are now becoming toxic clients. And if you're in toxic dynamics with your clients, your capacity is a lot less. So your income is now going to be a lot less because you can only handle so much. And the universe responds to that. And that's not me spiritual bypassing. That's the law of the universe. You're gonna work for the universe. You gotta understand how your employer works. You gotta have some open hands at some stage. Hold on to a client here, but have this hand open, and you juggle them along.
My God, we do definitely work for the universe.
Yeah, it's a fun boss to have.
We're not going to get in that today.
Yeah, that we can do that as a different
We can do
episode.
that. So when it comes to our the practitioner and client dynamic, how does hierarchy and authority emerge in like emerge subtly in the healing and spiritual communities?
Mm. So I'll go back to my earlier point where as a practitioner, you do have a position of authority and power with your clients because of what they're coming to you with. They're looking up to you to give them guidance. It's like a little child going to its parent to understand the meaning of life. As an example, your parents know more than you because they've been around longer, they're more experienced, and it's no different dynamic to a practitioner and their client. And that's where, again, as practitioners, we need to be so aware of that power dynamic, instead of minimizing it and shrinking away from it of like, oh, I don't hold any authority. No, you do. Like you absolutely do. Because when you try and shrink away from it, you're causing aversion and avoidance. And you will inadvertently cause harm in a different way. Um, and we've got to again come back to that middle line of where, if a client is putting us on this pedestal and saying, oh, you're the ultimate authority, you're the one who's going to give me the answers, we need to shift it around and be like, the answers are in you, but let's do some work together and let's discover those answers and let me walk alongside you. So as practitioners, it's kind of like walking alongside your clients, but just that little bit in front. I think the hermit card is a really great depiction of what a true practitioner is. He's got that little lamp, and that bit of light is all he needs to see just in front of him, and for the person just next to him to also see and shed light on that. Like, this is where we're doing the work right now, is on this little spotlight. And that's all that we need to be doing right now. But the hermit isn't 10 yards ahead, being like, cool, can you see me down there? No. Like, come back and walk alongside your clients. And it's not holding your client's hand either. It's walking
Mhm.
alongside them, and that's where we become very humble as practitioners, where we get to bear witness to their journeys and their experiences. You have this human being that maybe you've never met before. They're completely fresh through your door, and they're coming to you and saying, I want you to be a part of my journey. I want you to witness me. And that is a very humbling experience for a practitioner. If we move into a space of being humble with our clients, we can shift that unhealthy power dynamic, because now we're not shrinking away from the power. Like, yeah, absolutely, I'll bear witness to you. I will absolutely hold space for you. I will hold that lamp for you, but you need to walk. I'm not going to pick you up and carry you, but I will walk alongside you. I'm not going to hold your hand, but I'll walk alongside you. And that's kind of how we find that middle line with our clients, where we're not 10 yards ahead saying, hey, catch up, do the work. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm saying. Your client is stumbling along behind you. And you're not dragging your clients along either and forcing their process and forcing their journey. You gotta do that, walk alongside them. That's the journey of healing.
I like that the walking alongside them and just referencing the hermit card, which I love. That's like one of my favorite cards because I feel like I go into my hermit mode.
Mm.
But I feel like now that you explain it and broke it down like that, it's like we are not here to do the work for them. Like, we're there,
Mm.
but they got to do the work. Like, they have to get up. They have to get out of bed, wash their face. Like we can't be there washing their face,
Mm.
getting them dressed. Like they have to do that. But
Yep.
we can be waiting outside the door. Like, are you ready yet? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I'm here. I'm waiting for you whenever you're ready. So we are there as a guide, as just to help them as they are on their journey. But we're
Mm.
not going to do the work
That's
because because if we do the work, is it really for them? It's really for us.
mm.
And they're not going to be able to work through their own stuff if we're doing the work for them.
Yes, yes, perfectly put. And that's the codependent cycle, right? Where the client's like, well, you can just fix me. You can do the work for me. Like you're getting nothing from your session. You're going to be 10 years down the line and still handing the stuff over to your practitioner. And you're just perpetuating a really unhealthy cycle for yourself. Yeah, and that is a misconception a lot of people have about spirituality and spiritual practitioners is that this Reiki session is going to fix me. This tarot reader is going to tell me what to do. This witch at the edge of the forest is going to give me some kind of muti and it's going to fix my broken heart. I was asked a couple of weeks back, like, what fixes a broken heart, and I'm like, time. I don't have a magic potion in my bag. I'm so sorry, but I can hold some space for you and hear what broke your heart, and maybe that unpacking might move you along a little bit forward, but
Yeah.
otherwise just some time. There's no magic formulas inside spirituality.
I mean, and that sometimes is the magic. It's
Mm,
like thinking that it has to be this formula, and it could be as simple as journaling about your experience, talking to someone, and adopting some practices to get you through it. And
mm.
not, I mean, imagine if we could just wave a wand and fix all our problems. And like, what is the growth to that? What are we learning from that? Because we're going to find ourselves in that pattern again because we really didn't fix it.
Mm. Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
going to show up in a different body, a different person, right? And we're going to
yes.
be triggered and have that same experience.
Absolutely, yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, that's how we get stuck in our patterns and cycles, where it's we're handing over the responsibility to someone else. When I teach people to read the tarot, that's one of the things that I teach them is that your clients cannot ask questions that hand responsibility over to you as the reader, and if they do, you reformat that question and you put the power back in their court and you say, let's look at that from a different angle. I can't. Don't give me your power. I've got my own power going on. Thank you, and I'm empowered enough. I don't need to take on yours as well, because you're just repeating your patterns. You're looking externally for the world to fix you and your problems. It's an inside job. Healing is an inside job, and you're working with a guide that's showing you how you can do that work, not do the work for you. You got a big boundary there.
So as a client, what does that look like to center self-trust rather than relying on belief system or teachings? And it could be just how can a practitioner help their client center that self-trust?
Yeah, empowering your clients. Being curious with your clients, I think, is one of I mean, depends on your modality. If you're doing anything that's verbal and you're having conversations with them, get curious around your client and their experience, because that invites curiosity for themselves. And curiosity invites reflection. And when we're starting to reflect on our stuff and why we are where we're at, how did I develop these patterns that I'm trying to break? That curiosity brings in a very gentle space in which to do that kind of reflective work. Um, and it's educating our clients as well about our modalities. So if we're now in the realms of energetic healing or sound baths or anything like that, where there isn't necessarily verbal communication, um, educating your clients before and post sessions that this is how this modality works. Essentially, I'm going to be creating a space for you, for your body to do what it already knows how to do. The human body is highly intelligent. Um, some humans aren't specifically intelligent, but the body is amazing. The body is wonderfully intelligent. We need to absorb some of that. And the body knows what it needs to do because first and foremost, the body is what has led you to this practitioner in the first place. And as a practitioner, you give them that power that says, I'm going to create a safe landing space for you and your body to regulate and heal and do what it already knows how to do. I mean, we have immune systems for a reason. I'm not going to climb inside my client's immune system and be like, cool, let's fight off the bacteria. That is not how these sessions work. They create the space so that the body's own immune system can fight off the infections and things that it needs to. And the same is for anything that your client is dealing with. It really is. It's educating your clients, and being curious with your clients. I think are two of some of the best ways that you can give them that power back. When people are saying, you give me the answers. No, let's explore the answers together. Let's be curious about this. And what makes you want me to give you the answers as well? Let's start there. Let's start with what's making you feel like you need to hand your power over to me. And depending on the relationship you have with your client, if it's a long-standing client that you've got a good relationship with, hey, Dad, call them out and be like, bitch, what you doing right now? You know better than to hand your power over to me. Like, come on, you deserve better. I'm not the authority on your life. Let's put this ball back in your court and let's look at it from your side. Like, let's talk about this. So it's the relationship you've got with your clients, and knowing how to nurture your clients, because that's what you're doing. You're nurturing them, as a mother nurturing a baby. You're not doing all the work for them. You're showing them how to walk, but they still got to get up and use their own legs. They've got to figure out walking for themselves. You can't move their legs along for them. They're going to keep falling over, right, if you try and do it that way around. So instead you show and you teach and you have that conversation of like, hey, if you try it this way, try leaning on the table. You give them tools to work with so they can do the work for themselves.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, that was beautifully said. As we wrap this up, Tam, what are some, like the last two questions are, what does a practitioner, how can a practitioner disrupt these patterns within their own work? And then provide some tools on kind of what that looks like. And also, what does integrity look like when guiding others without positioning yourself as the answer? Excuse me. My voice was like, but yeah, so how can we disrupt that? And I feel like we touched on this a lot, but if there's anything else that you want to add to, how can they actively disrupt these patterns in their practice?
And integrity is such a prominent word there. I mean, as a mentor for practitioners, integrity is one of the words I'm going to be telling you a lot. Like, where's your integrity? What does your integrity look like? And integrity is based on our ethics. Ethics is really a beautiful foundation on which to build your integrity. For me, I use yoga's ethics as my set of ethics in the work that I do and how I conduct myself inside life. So you have your yamas and niyamas. Yamas is how we interact with the world around us. It's our external ethics. So, do no harm. And when we're talking about non-harming with our clients, it's not just, don't smack your clients around. And, if you're a chiropractor, you don't, be gentle with them. There's so much more to the thing of being non-harming. The words you use, the energy you hold. Are you coming into your sessions with a whole lot of your stuff, like baggage coming into your session? You can inadvertently harm your clients. Be honest with your clients. But again, how are you speaking honesty? Are you speaking from a place of brutal truth, or sharing knowledge and wisdom, but speaking truth? Um, you have your non-attachment. You have moderation with your clients. That um, energy work is a great example there. Are you blasting your clients with a whole lot of energy, or have you got moderation with your clients? Be practice non-attachment with your clients. Um, and non-stealing is a great example. It's not just overcharging your clients. It's also don't undercharge your clients, because now you're stealing from yourself. But also your time management. Are you going over 10 or 20 minutes into your session? You're stealing your client's time, you're stealing your time, and you're stealing your next client's time. So there's nuances to these ethics, and that's why I love working with them so much, because they're hit in all the right places. And then you have your niyamas, which is your internal ethics. This is how you are with inside yourself. And I think my biggest one there is self-study. Svadhyaya, like absolutely know thyself is a very powerful phrase for a reason, especially as a practitioner. We've got to develop self-awareness, because if you don't know who's coming into sessions with your clients, you're now popping into those external ethics, and you could be inadvertently causing harm or clinging to your clients, but you don't have that awareness of the self, so you don't see it. You also have surrender to, in yoga, it's specifically surrender to a higher power or something bigger than yourself. And there's always something bigger than all of us, right? So surrendering to your client's process. So having no expectations for your client's outcome. We have purity. When we talk about purity inside yoga, it's not like, moral purity. It's purity of mind, purity of speech, purity of energy. Are you clearing and cleansing yourself between your sessions with your clients, or are you just back to back with your clients and you're just lugging everybody's energy through, and the last person you see in the day has got 10 people's energy coming into that room? Your purity. Where is your mind? How clear is your mind? How are you looking after yourself as a practitioner? So our relationships, our food, the music that we listen to, the people we interact with, that all comes into that realm of purity. So you have these really beautiful sets of ethics that um, give you everything that you could possibly need as a practitioner. The yamas and niyamas is a wonderful toolbox as a practitioner, and they will naturally develop integrity for you if you truly unpack them and understand the totality of what they're telling you. Non-harming. There's so much nuance there. Moderation. There's so much nuance there. So ethics, have a solid foundation of ethics for yourself as a practitioner. You don't need too much more in your toolbox past that, I would say, to develop your integrity.
Yeah. Yeah, it's whether you adopt those or you adopt whatever you have for yourself. It's just having that integrity is
Mm,
important. Because if you don't
mm,
have integrity, you're gonna show up inconsistent.
mm,
You could be causing harm than
mm,
good, right? And you can be having those attachment issues or codependency. So you could be showing up in your trauma as well.
mm. Oh, yes, nicely put. Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you brought the word consistency in. As a practitioner, we need to be practicing our consistency, which is discipline. Tapas is the one Niyama didn't mention, and that helps us cultivate consistency for ourselves. When we talk about discipline, it's not rigidity and structure. You've got to be up at 5 a.m. and on your yoga mat and doing all the things. It's being consistent in who you are, being consistent in your authenticity and showing up as yourself consistently. Because if you're all over the place as a practitioner, you're not a safe space for your clients, because there's no consistency there. And consistency breeds that safe space for your clients, where they know, I know Tam, I know what to expect from Tam, I know what I'm going to have in my session with Tam. But if Tam arrives the next day and she's completely different to what she was the day before, they're going to be like, who is this person? What is happening here? I don't feel safe anymore. And your clients are going to shut down on you. So yeah, consistency definitely is a great one to include there.
Yeah. Thank you, Tam.
Thank you.
As we wrap this up, like this has been a pleasure to have you here. Is there anything that I didn't touch on that you want to share your final thoughts on before I share some questions for the listeners?
Oh, I'm gonna say it again. Check yourself before you wreck yourself and someone else. It really is. When that was taught to me, I was like, man, I've got to teach the rest of the world this saying because it really is. That's the antithesis of being a practitioner. You've got to constantly be checking yourself because of the work that we do and the things that the clients come to. You've got to constantly be doing that check-in work.
Yeah. You heard that, listeners. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. No, I mean, I think that is key though, because how am I showing up right now? If you're doing a session with your client and your mind starts to go into what you got to do for the day, you start to plan your schedule and they're just unpacking everything and you're like, oh, what did you say? You're not
Mm,
there, you're not present with them. And so really just checking yourself before you wreck your relationship with your client.
yes.
So no, I think that's a good way to close. So, listeners, I have some closing integration questions for you. You can either write these down or you can, recite them out loud to yourself as I go through them. But I think it's very key to integrate some of the stuff that we talked about today. So, where have you noticed familiar patterns repeating in spiritual wellness spaces? What helps you stay connected to your own discernment rather than external authority? As a practitioner, how do you encourage empowerment over dependency? And lastly, what structures or practices help you remain grounded, transparent, and accountable? As we close this final conversation of the quarter, I invite you to reflect on what integrity looks like in the spaces you're a part of and the ones you help shape. Many people turn towards spirituality seeking freedom and connection. And it's our shared responsibility to ensure those spaces remain grounded in agency rather than authority. This conversation isn't about perfection or calling out harm. It's about awareness, accountability, and choosing practices that empower rather than replace a person's inner knowing. Healing doesn't require hierarchy, and guidance doesn't need to come at the cost of autonomy. As this quarter comes to a close, I encourage you to carry forward what feels steady, truthful, and supportive, both for yourself and for those you serve. So, thank you for engaging with these conversations thoughtfully and for contributing to a more conscious, ethical approach to spiritual and healing work. Thank you guys for joining me today, and I'm your host, Shunda Jenkins.